Here we go. All right. Welcome to our live today. We're going to be talking about mastitis. So we're excited. This is a loaded topic. And if you're not currently suffering from mastitis, it might be kind of boring, but it's good information to know. And it's good information to know is out there and know where to find it when you do mastitis. So.
Okay, so first thing that you should know about mastitis, okay, and most importantly, is that it is treatable.
It is.
And even more importantly, it's preventable. I walked that walk with every baby except the last two before I got really smart. I mean, I had some answers before that, but no fun at all. As a first-time mom, I knew nothing. I really thought I was going to go swimming, 48 hours after the baby was born and get back to exercising. I mean, I knew nothing. It was a shock to me to find out there was postpartum stuff after a baby. And then as soon as I figured that out, got smacked with mastitis, dead of the winter, open a door and I'd be in agony from pleurisy or mastitis. So we found some answers a little bit at a time, and we'd like to share that with you. Mastitis, if left untreated,
can get serious really quickly.
Cost a woman a surgery.
and mastitis is a bacterial infection. So it can get out of hand. It can get very serious very quickly, but it's a bacteria infection that affects one or both mammary glands.
And it often starts in the lymph. My first symptom of mastitis was always under my left armpit. That would be my first sign, and the doctors would tell me, well, that's not mastitis. Well, it's going to be.
It's in the lymphs there, and then it spreads from there. Yep.
Yeah, it always was.
It often starts as a hard lump. It can be a little bit tender and sore, but not always. Sometimes it's just a lump.
It's hot.
And then the heat and the soreness will follow.
And then fever and chills and shivering, and you're so tired you can hardly pick up the baby.
Flu-like symptoms. Sometimes you'll feel anxiety. You'll feel overly stressed, overwhelmed. You can have general aches and pains throughout your entire body.
And you just feel like you want to do nothing but lay around on the bed. And that's why I've had a lot of women come to me when the thing is far advanced, and it's like, they don't realize. Deal with it. Been there, done that.
So the risk factors for mastitis, or if you've had it in the past, if you get a cracked or irritated nipple, that gives the bacteria a place to set in.
Yeah.
Yep. If you delay entirely, or if you start skipping breastfeeding sessions, and that sometimes can't be avoided as the child grows up and starts to eat solid foods.
Well, but sometimes in our modern society now, women will pump and get a bottle. They'll leave the baby home for an afternoon and an evening, and not breastfeed, and that's kind of a recipe for disaster in some ways.
Mom and baby need to establish a routine, and that can help stave off mastitis and prevent it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
but it is more common for a woman to get mastitis as the baby matures and starts going.
I laugh here because I kind of contradicted myself, because it says mastitis is more common during the early months of a nursing life. Then the very next dot says mastitis also occurs more frequently as the baby grows.
But that middle period, there isn't quite so much of a
quite
risk.
Nicely there in the middle, but yeah.
Yeah, right as you first get started and all those things are just starting to work, that's when you have some troubles, and then towards the end when you're starting to taper off, you need to watch for troubles again.
Yes. Okay,
so causes of mastitis. A blocked milk duct is very, very common cause for mastitis.
Yes, and that can be difficult. I had a doctor give me some advice on how to do that caused me to pass out and split my head open in the bathroom. We won't go into that.
Okay, I don't know the story.
Oh, yes, it was nasty.
So anything that contributes to the milk not being properly expressed, rather you got a bad pump, and I'm not a big fan of pumping. Feeding the baby is just so much easier. There's less dishes, it's just easier to feed the baby. But
drag the baby around,
whatever. But like if the baby has like maybe a cleft palate, or
even we had an oddly shaped
sucking
palate, or some sort of a sucking response thing that's a little difficult.
Anything like that can put you at higher risk. You need to be more vigilant.
Yeah,
sometimes it's just as simple as getting the baby to delatch the same exact way every single time. Using that one finger and not changing it up a little bit.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. The major reason for mastitis, though, is, and it has to happen at some point, is bacteria entering the breast, and that can happen from not washing your hands.
I've always
cracked nipples.
How that would be, but once a mother gets a mastitis, even if it's only minor, she passes those bacteria to the baby's mouth, and then the baby passes it back. So to treat mastitis, whether the baby's showing any signs of thrush or not, you've got to treat the baby too, or it's just an endless round.
Which, if you're breastfeeding,
which is what I didn't know.
You kind of do a little bit, because whatever you're taking internally, the baby's going to get through the breast milk. But if the baby's a little bit older, you might consider giving the baby some
rinsing the mouth with some.
Yeah, especially if they start to show any signs of thrush, which we're going to talk about. This is a mastitis blog, but we are going to cover thrush a little bit too. I think the number one cause, though, for mastitis is lymphatic congestion. It is by far
certainly it for me, no question, because it would start in the major lymph ducts under my arm and then pass from there.
So that means exercise.
Obviously, an infection somewhere else, like a kidney infection,
probably
was plugging up in the lymph under my arm and then going from there to the breast. So yeah, it was a mess. So.
Anything that you can do to keep lymph flowing will help prevent mastitis, and we'll go into some of that too in a little bit. But let's talk about breast abscesses for just a minute, though.
Oh, what do you want to talk about?
If a breast infection is not treated very promptly, it can actually create abscesses on the breast, and this is one of your first indications that you need to
Please do not ignore mastitis until there is screening from places. Please do not do that. Okay.
By then, you need serious
red
help.
Streaks extending away from the breast.
Blood poisoning.
Do not be doing that, because
don't go there.
It's nasty. I have seen women lose parts of their breast over that. So don't go there.
Okay. Thrush. We were the most common way for the baby to get thrush is when they're born. They get it in their mouth from a candida infection
that the mother had
when the baby was born, and then it very quickly becomes a problem for the mom as the baby latches on it and passes it into mastitis. But thrush is mean. I've never done mastitis, but I've done thrush.
You've never done mastitis, and you're my daughter? Oh,
I've never done mastitis. Yeah, I have done thrush on my nipples, and I've watched a baby do it. And having a baby with thrush is a miserable experience. It was Christmas when I did
enough, that. I was so careful with you guys with the breast shield and stuff that none of my babies ever did thrush. In spite of the rounds of mastitis.
My first one did. And that's the only one that ever did.
None of you ever did that.
Not fun. So what is thrush? You can recognize thrush by distinctive white lesions that are in the mouth. The baby's tongue will have little white spots all over it, or in really bad cases, the entire tongue will be white.
And they don't want to nurse.
They cry because it hurts to nurse.
And that they've been a good little nurser and suddenly they're not, that would give
then you start looking at the mouth. And if you catch it early, they're just little. There's hardly anything to see. But diaper rash that won't clear up is another sign of thrush.
An unusual fussiness. If the baby's fussy and irritable, they don't feel well, and they may not be fevering enough for you to notice. You may only be a matter of along their back or their abdominal, but if they're
we did thrush on Christmas. I mean, it was 20 years ago, and we didn't think of treating it herbally. My mom's first thought was, well, this is something you go to the doctor for, because that's what her mama taught her. And
like none of my babies ever did thrush. So what
it was Christmas Day. We had no way of we couldn't get anybody. And it was a weekend. It was going to be several days before we could. I was in agony. So we did go after it herbally. And I was surprised at how quickly it cleared things up and how much faster the baby was doing better. And I was doing better. I did discover a product called Lananosh, which is basically lamb fat. And it's like a thick cream. And putting that on was like
lanolin cream.
Yeah, it was amazing. It took the pain away for me. And it was something that I didn't feel horrible about my baby eating back off. that a little healthy fats was okay with me. Anyway, so there we go. All right.
So what's the difference between thrush and mastitis in a woman?
Isn't thrush a form of candida?
Thrush is a form of candida, and it pretty much stays to the nipple. Yeah. Mastitis itself is a different sort of bacterial infection, and it goes lymph really fast. If it didn't start there,
to begin with, that's right.
Mastitis is much more serious than an itchy, nasty, rashy thrush.
I don't know much about mastitis, having never done it. I've cleaned it up in goats a lot, but I've never myself experienced it. So
good for you. I'm proud of that.
Anyway, all right. So to avoid mastitis, some things you can do would be to completely drain the milk from your breast when you're done breastfeeding. The baby should completely drain one before switching to the other.
See, that was a lot of my problem. I always, because of a shoulder injury, preferred to hold my babies on the left side. So I would nurse the left side first and then the right. You'd think that would, on the right side, but it seemed like some milk flowed on the left. If I'd have gave the baby another second on the left, it probably would have eliminated that problem.
Yeah.
On the left side is where
Don't
my
always start them on
were.
the same side. Switch back and
Switch
forth
back
so
and
that if they get
forth,
full, yeah, change
Yeah.
the position that you use. These are important.
Yep.
Make sure the baby latches on properly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Smoking actually is smokers are more prone to mastitis. So
well, that wasn't my problem.
No, that wasn't your problem. Blows and impacts to the breast can cause.
And see, that might have been part of mine. I was in a motorcycle accident as a teenager.
Yeah.
And took a severe blow to the left side.
It creates
Might
damage.
have been part of the
and
problem
causes
with that too. So.
Yeah, blockages in the milk ducts.
Yeah.
So
sleeping on your stomach,
yeah.
I always did that. Unless I was 8 months pregnant, I slept on my stomach. So
as soon as the baby was here,
that,
you're back sleeping on your stomach. I think that's because it cuts off the circulation to the breast.
It does. Causes blockage in the milk ducts. So.
Which slows down the lymphatic drainage. And here we're back to the same
still like to
thing.
sleep on my stomach.
Okay. Soaps and deodorants that are full of chemicals can clog the lymphs, and they do raise your
susceptibility and risk for that. So.
All right. So now to the fun part. This isn't going to be that long of a live, but I want to tell you how to treat mastitis.
Antibiotics are the first thing that doctors try. That was the first thing I tried. Unfortunately, I'm allergic to enough antibiotics that the reaction for the antibiotic, I didn't at first realize that this wasn't part of the mastitis. The antibiotic reaction was part of the reason I was so sick. But part of it is how long an antibiotic takes to kick in. Now, the modern day ones kick in a little faster. They would tell me 46 hours. Well, a mastitis can get critical in 46 hours, especially if it started in the lymph under your arm.
Or if you didn't realize what it was. Yeah.
So that can allow it to get away from it. You want something that works a little quicker.
Yeah. Another reason to avoid antibiotics is because they've been linked to yeast infections, and you're already
got bacteria issues. So.
You're already at risk with the thrush and the baby and mom sharing this back and forth, and throwing antibiotics into the mix just increases that.
Well, part of my problem is that my oldest one, as an infant, didn't do any better with antibiotics than his mother, and you were nursing that through to the baby. So, there was an issue that kind of made them not the answer either. So, okay. So herbal answers.
Garlic is the number one herb, and it's because it's such a good infection fighter. So if you have any type of garlic that you can start taking.
Will kill it. Whether it's fresh or garlic capsule or whatever, garlic will do it.
Garlic is amazing for any type of infection. Another thing, and the number one thing that you need to know how to do with mastitis is a mastitis pack. And that is where you're using herbs as a poultice. And I've actually made a video, I'm going to be in different clothes because I didn't make it today, that shows you how to make a poultice. I didn't think there's no way I can do that in front of a computer. So I actually made a video that I'm going to show you really quick.
So let's talk about this pack though for a minute.
All right.
Now, one of the most important things about it, and this is why it took us so long to learn it, my husband would go and get the stuff for the mastitis pack from our midwife and bring it home, and he would make it, and it did absolutely nothing. And I would get so frustrated. And the next time I would do it, here we go around again. The garlic would eventually clear it up. I mean, it eventually went away, but the pack was worthless. And finally, it was third baby. Okay, we've done this more than once now. And he comes home not with the antibiotic I sent him for. I was finally willing to do the antibiotic reaction.
Anything
to get some
relief.
And he comes home with this mastitis. If I hadn't been so sick, I'd have got up and clobbered him. But what he said is, honey, I finally listened. I listened. She said, you have to do the mastitis pack in distilled water. Sure. It pulls better, and the chlorine interferes with the mullein, which is a major part of the mastitis pack. And I couldn't believe how fast it worked when made properly. Without fluoridated and chlorinated water.
So what's in that thing? Let's tell you. Comfrey root. It has poke root. It has mullein flower. It has mullein leaf.
There's no hops.
No. Slippery elm.
Little story.
Oh, golden seal root and lobelia
with hops.
So those are the ingredients that are in it, and it does work very quickly.
Oh, it's an amazing thing. Even when it's hit the abscess stage, it will cope
pull
with
and
that.
draw.
It will pull and draw and fix it. It's messy, and you have to leave it on with heat. And the longer you leave it on, the faster it works. And so the mom ends up pretty much down with a pack across her chest and a heat pack on it. So but it's worth it. So.
Okay, so let's show you how to make that real quick. If I can do that.
You can switch videos.
With me.
Huh?
All right, today I want to show you how to make a compress. And the first thing I want to show you is that we just kind of made a mini pillowcase, and we just took some fabric and folded it over and then sewed two sides of it shut. You don't have to do this, but it does make it easier. Then I have a piece of plastic wrap that I'm going to put underneath my pillow. Okay, I heated up some water on the stove and I waited for it to boil, but then when it quits boiling, I take it off the stove and I let it cool down for a minute. I'm making a mastitis pack, but there's lots of different things that you can do to make a compress with. You could make a compress with BHM. All right. Make sure we've got some. Yeah, that's probably about all the herb that we're going to need. And I like to use an alligator clip to close these back up, and then maybe throw them in a Ziploc bag just for added, just to make sure that it stays out of the air. All right. Now my not quite boiling water, but really close, is just going to go in over the herbs, just enough to cover them, and then we'll stir it around just a little, make sure they're all wet. And then I'm going to put this on top so that the steam from the water hits the plate and goes back down, and I don't lose those volatile oils and plant materials. I want that to stay for about 10 minutes. We come back to our herbs and they look really good. They've soaked up most of the water. If they haven't, that's okay. I don't want an area quite this big, so I'm going to fold back my towel. And I'll probably just use my hand. It could use a spoon. I'll grab a spoon real quick. There we go. And I'll just kind of spoon the herbs into the back corner and kind of spread them out. Spread them out. And they're going to stain this beautiful cloth. That's okay. I'll just use it next time. Throw it in the wash. There we go. All right. Then I'll take my thing and fold it over. And this part will go against the skin. And the plastic is just to kind of keep. So let's say I was putting it on my stomach. I would just put it right up like that, and then I would put either a rice pack or a hot pack against it. And I would leave it there for maybe half an hour or an hour. In the case of mastitis, I would probably wear it around as much as I could for as long as I could. Every 2 or 3 hours, you're going to want to get new herbs and do it again. So, thanks for watching. And that goes against the woman's breast, wherever the side, the top, wherever the pain is the worst. And then you put your plastic over the top of that, and then a towel or just the heat, whatever heat you're going to use. I like a rice pack. I like the feeling of the heavy heat.
Except you're going to want to have more than one so you can keep.
I swap them back and forth, and I make my kids constantly warming them up. And after a while, they just get tired of me and give me a heat pack anyways. But the first few times, anytime I'm using a compress, and I've never used it for mastitis, so maybe the weight of it would not be good with the mastitis.
I always used an electric. And I'm sure that wasn't the best, but it was lightweight and it didn't hurt.
But when I use a compress for other things, I like my rice pack.
I do too.
So there we go, for what it's worth. Now that mastitis pack should be changed out every.
You need to make a new one. I would think every 24 hours, every 12 hours if you can.
And every 3 or 4 would be even better. The herbs are cheap, and keeping them fresh and keeping those.
You want all the pulling power you can get. That's right. Especially if you've hit the abscess stage before you acted on it.
Okay, other things that you absolutely want to do, because it's a bacterial infection, anything that you can take to kill bacteria infections, the BAC tincture, infection fighters, red clover, any of the tinctures that fight infections.
And anything that moves lymph.
And since you're down, exercise is out. Endo Relief is the #1 oil for that. And you put it everywhere. Put it anywhere that's not
at the base of your neck and go down your arms and everywhere else you can think of.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing that you want to consider is supporting the kidneys. As the infection starts to die off, the kidneys take a hit. So make sure you're drinking plenty of water.
You just get through the mastitis pain, and then you got the kidney backache.
Yep.
So KT. Support those kidneys.
Yep. Those are our major
for infection fighter. Whatever.
And any of the kidney.
Fight back and fight hard and fast.
The KB formula is not as good as the KT formula. And the reason for this is because KB contains parsley, which has been known to dry up milk. Yes. Now, if your mastitis is being caused by an overproduction of milk and you want a little less milk, that might not be a bad thing, but that is something that you need to bear in mind. And
neither KT nor KB contain a lot of heavy duty infection fighters. You've got to match it with IF or RC or something.
Yarrow, usnea, something
going to Yarrow will kind of dry up the milk a little too. So
a little bit. So, okay. Deliverance is another blend that's really
Deliverance on the bottom of the feet, oddly
Yep.
enough, will bite back very, very well.
Yep.
Deliverance or Spice C. So if
Okay.
it's a thrush and it's in your mouth, swoosh in your mouth with Spice C or one of those would.
So as far as thrush goes too with the baby, if you can dilute Deliverance really, really, really well, I'm talking like get a toothpick and put a little tiny bit in water and wash the baby's mouth out with it, and then start the baby on any of the glycerin, the things that are done in glycerin that a baby can take for infection fighter. RC is a good one, and it's not overly strong, but it will help to clear up that infection. I love the catnip chamomile because they're usually fussy. They're hungry, but they don't want to eat because it hurts. And catnip chamomile
has infection.
It does have infection fighting properties, and babies respond very quickly, so they don't need strong things. So those two I would definitely have on hand. If I was expecting a baby, I have catnip chamomile on hand. In fact, I have my babies too, and I still keep that one on hand
for grandbabies.
Yep. That's one that every woman that's expecting should have, because she'll use it at least a few times. It's great for colic. Yeah.
One of the key things that makes the mastitis pack work is the poke root, which Latin name is Phytolacca decandra. And so that as a homeopathic is a tremendous way to deal with the mastitis. One of the best things I know of.
Yeah.
So
it helps, especially if it's to that abscess form.
Yes, particularly that. That poke root is good for any kind of an abscess infection. I don't care if it's on a tooth or where you find it.
Or a breast, it doesn't matter.
It's the number one for that.
So. Swelling in lymph gland, that's sure. Yeah. Okay, other remedies that you might consider homeopathically would be belladonna.
And the keynote to belladonna is that it came on
very
suddenly.
Quickly.
That was never my remedy because it always started under my armpit. It came on slowly. That was not. But man, I've had women tell me, I went to bed and I woke up 3 hours later and the whole breast was red and inflamed, and and it was, that's belladonna. Okay.
And then Byronia alba is one where it goes from a mastitis infection to that abscess stage very quickly.
Very quickly.
Like you realize you have a
slow
mastitis.
start, but then it just goes crazy.
Goes nuts. Another good one is Carboveg or Carbovegetablus. I always shorten that.
Most people do.
And that one is a good one.
And that's where the auxiliary glands up under the arm are particularly tender. That was the one that did me the most good.
That one helped. So. Yeah. And then chamomile. It's good for the baby. It's good for mom too, right?
If mom feels the keynote to chamomile in a woman is clingy, whiny. Woe is me! Brat. I'm going to be dead, and I need attention.
I feel like I'm acting like a spoiled brat, and it's not me typically. What do I do? Yeah. So. There are two more. There's cystis candensis, which is sensitivity to cold air.
Oh, that
every time you open.
I didn't know.
She didn't know. We didn't try enough
for that, but
yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I could be in the back bedroom. They opened the front door when someone knocked, and I was going to get worse. So that would have been a great benefit.
And then the Croton tigulum, is when it's painful taking the nipple back from the baby. And I actually did experience some of that. I never turned into mastitis though. But it would be like, oh, I don't want you to be done because that's going to hurt. I did get to that stage.
Croton, I could be wrong, but I'm thinking it's cottonseed, but I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Huh. There's a few other things that you want to do if you've ever done mastitis or if you're wanting to prevent it. Lecithin, which is a good thing to take when you're pregnant because it helps the baby's lungs to develop. But
if there's any chance you're going to go into early labor, you should be taking lecithin.
That's right.
2-3 months.
I take it from the 20th week on about. Yeah. So, and it is a good thing to be on when you're nursing too. It provides some nutrients that can stave off mastitis, and it's just really good for you. So,
yep.
Okay, heat and cold.
That's funny that both heat and cold work now.
And that's because the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump like the circulatory system has the heart as a pump. The lymphatic system doesn't have one, but cold will cause the blood vessels and those to contract, and then heat causes them to expand. And so that triggers the lymphatic system to work. And so heat and cold and alternating them, unless you're one of those that cold is.
Trust me on this, heat more than cold. Okay.
More heat than cold. Yep.
Because the cold can be good.
Cabbage leaves and potatoes are well known over the past.
They were the pioneer way of dealing with infections and inflammation.
I think the mastitis pack is 100 times stronger.
I do too, and I've tried them both.
But if I started a mastitis infection and I didn't have one on hand and I had to order one, I'd be doing this in the meantime, because you can go eat cabbage leaves and potatoes from anywhere. And we did talk about how you would use those in the blog. And that's kind of one of those things we could tell you, but until you actually need the information, you probably won't remember it anyway. So just knowing that it's on the blog, you can look it up, how to do it. And we just want to tell you that it's treatable. You can totally do this. You can totally do this at home, as long as you haven't let it get really, really bad.
I remember getting so sick, so lightheaded, so dizzy, so nauseous, so sick. Some of it was the reaction to the antibiotic, but I've seen some pretty sick women with mastitis.
And let people take care of you. Take the time that you need to rest, to recover. Let your older kids pick up the slack, or call your neighbors. If you're LDS, call your visiting teachers. Let them pick up some of that slack so that you can recover from this. Don't let it cost you the rest of your nursing career.
Major infection, and it needs
and you deserve to take some time off while you get a handle on it.
Yep.
So.
And
all right.
Make sure someone brings you lots of good things to eat.
That's right.
Nutrition is important.
Nutrition is important. So we hope that you've enjoyed this live. And if you do have any questions, feel free to message us on Facebook and or YouTube. And we'll catch you all next time.